What happens when one of pop music's most recognizable voices walks onto a daytime talk show expecting a routine conversation, and instead finds himself in the middle of a tense, uncomfortable exchange that quickly spirals beyond anyone's control? Make sure to subscribe to Talk Show Fallout and like and comment for more talk show coverage. The audience applauds as Shawn Mendes steps onto the stage, offering a polite smile and a small wave. He's dressed simply, neutral-tone sweater, dark jeans. Nothing flashy, very much his usual calm, grounded presence. He leans in to greet the hosts, exchanging quick handshakes and brief hugs before taking his seat. Joy Behar smiles, but it's the kind of smile that feels more observational than warm. "Well, Shawn Mendes is here," she says, glancing toward the audience. Singer, songwriter, heartthrob apparently. The audience chuckles lightly. Shawn laughs softly, nodding. "I guess that's what they say sometimes." Another host jumps in quickly, trying to keep things light. "You've been busy, new music, touring, taking some time for yourself too, right?" "Yeah," Shawn replies, relaxed. "I've been focusing on balance more than anything. Just trying to stay grounded, spend time with family, and not rush everything." Joy leans forward slightly, tilting her head. Balance is interesting, because a lot of people think celebrities talk about balance when things aren't going so great behind the scenes. There's a subtle shift in the room. Shawn pauses for a moment, still smiling, but it's tighter now. "I think everyone goes through ups and downs. It's not really about being a celebrity, it's just being human." The audience murmurs in agreement. Joy doesn't let it settle. "But you stepped away from the spotlight for a while. Canceled shows. That's not just being human. That's something bigger, right?" One of the co-hosts gently interjects. "Joy." But Shawn answers before it escalates. "I mean, yeah, I needed time. Mental health is important. And I think it's okay to say that without it becoming a huge headline." The audience applauds softly. Joy raises an eyebrow. "Sure, but some people would say when you're in that position, there's a responsibility. Fans buy tickets, they expect you to show up." There's a noticeable tension now. Shawn shifts slightly in his seat, his tone still calm. "And I respect that. I really do. That's exactly why I made the decision I did, because I didn't want to give them anything less than my best." Another host nods. "That actually makes sense." But Joy leans in again, pressing. "Or, you didn't want to face the pressure." A few audience members react, some surprised, others uncomfortable. Shawn lets out a small breath, keeping his composure. "Pressure is part of the job. That's not something I run from." Joy shrugs. "Well, canceling a tour kind of looks like running from it." There's an audible ooh from the audience. One of the hosts quickly tries to soften it. "I think what Shawn is saying is..." But Shawn raises his hand slightly, still respectful. "It's okay. I can answer." He looks directly at Joy now, not confrontational, but more focused. "I think there's a difference between running away and taking responsibility. I didn't want to stand on stage and not be fully present. That wouldn't be fair to anyone." The audience applauds again, a bit louder this time. Joy crosses her arms lightly. Or maybe fans would have preferred honesty on stage instead of silence off it. Shawn nods slowly. "That's fair. But I was honest. I told them exactly why I needed to step back." The energy in the room tightens. Another host jumps in, trying to redirect. "Let's talk about the new music, because you've been teasing some really personal stuff." Shawn smiles slightly, grateful for the shift. "Yeah, it's definitely more vulnerable. I think going through that time changed how I write." Joy interrupts again, cutting through the moment. "More vulnerable, or more calculated?" The audience reacts again, this time louder. "Joy," another host says, clearly trying to rein things in. But Joy continues. "I mean, let's be honest, being vulnerable sells these days. It's a brand." Shawn's expression changes. He's still composed, but there's a firmness now. "I don't think vulnerability is something you fake," he says. "At least, not if you want it to mean anything." The audience claps, some people nodding. Joy tilts her head again. "But how do we know it's real? You're an entertainer. That's your job." There's a pause. Shawn leans back slightly, then forward again, choosing his words carefully. "I think people can tell the difference. And if they don't connect with it, that's okay. Not everything is for everyone." The audience gives a mix of applause and murmurs. Joy smiles faintly. "That's a very safe answer." That line lands heavier than expected. Shawn doesn't smile this time. It's not about being safe. It's about being honest without turning everything into a debate. The audience reacts, some clapping, some going quiet. One of the hosts quickly steps in again. Okay, everyone take a breath here. But the moment has already shifted. Joy leans back, arms still crossed, watching Shawn closely. You seem a little defensive. Shawn shakes his head slightly. I'm not defensive. I'm just answering your questions. Joy responds quickly, with very polished answers. A few audience members gasp quietly. Shawn exhales, then looks directly at her again. Would you prefer unpolished answers? That gets a reaction, some laughter, some applause. Joy smirks. Depends. Are those the real ones? There's a brief silence. Shawn nods once. Yeah, they are. The tension is now fully visible, no longer subtle, no longer easy to redirect. One of the co-hosts glances toward the producers off camera, clearly aware that things are starting to slip beyond the usual daytime TV tone. But the audience is locked in now. And so is Shawn. He adjusts slightly in his seat, his voice still calm. But there's a quiet confidence building underneath it. I think sometimes, he continues, people expect artists to either be perfect or completely broken. And if you're somewhere in the middle, it confuses them. The audience listens closely. Joy responds immediately. Or maybe it just doesn't sell as well. That line hangs in the air. And for the first time since he walked on stage, Shawn doesn't respond right away. He just looks at her. The room goes quiet. The silence lingers for a moment longer than anyone expects. Shawn finally leans forward slightly, resting his hands together, his voice still controlled. But there's a noticeable shift now. I don't think everything has to sell to be valid. A few audience members clap, cautiously at first. Joy gives a small shrug. That's a nice idea. But this is still an industry, right? Music, image, interviews, it's all part of the same machine. Shawn nods once. Of course. But that doesn't mean every decision is made for profit. Joy responds almost instantly. Isn't it though? There's a ripple through the audience again. One of the co-hosts jumps in, trying to soften things. I think what Joy is getting at is that there's always a business side to entertainment. Shawn turns slightly toward her, acknowledging the point. Yeah, there is. I'm not denying that. But for me, stepping away wasn't a business move. If anything, it probably cost me more than it helped. The audience reacts, some murmurs of agreement, a few louder claps. Joy raises her eyebrows. But it also got people talking about you again. That lands sharply. Shawn pauses, then gives a small, almost disbelieving smile. You think I canceled an entire tour, just for attention? A few people in the audience let out an audible wow. Joy doesn't back off. I'm saying public figures know how attention works. Whether it's intentional or not, it keeps your name in the conversation. Shawn nods slowly, his expression tightening just slightly. There's a difference between something happening and something being planned. Joy leans forward again. But you benefit from it either way. Before Shawn can respond, another host steps in, voice more firm this time. Okay, I think we need to be careful not to. But Shawn raises his hand again, calm but decisive. No, it's all right. He turns back to Joy. I get what you're saying. I really do. But not everything is a strategy. Sometimes people just go through things. The audience claps more confidently now. Joy taps her fingers lightly on the table. And sometimes people use those things. That comment draws a louder reaction, some boos mixed with scattered applause. Shawn lets out a slow breath, clearly choosing not to react emotionally. If someone is using it, that's on them. But I can only speak for myself. Joy tilts her head again, studying him. And you expect everyone to just take that at face value? Shawn answers without hesitation. No. People can think whatever they want. The tone of the room shifts again, not explosive, but heavier. Another host leans in, trying to regain control. Let's maybe shift gears just a little. Shawn, your fans have been incredibly supportive through everything. What has that been like for you? Shawn nods, grateful for the question. It's been amazing, honestly. I think that's what made everything easier, knowing that people understood, or at least tried to. The audience applauds warmly. Joy interjects again, but this time her tone is slightly sharper. Or they just didn't question it. There's a pause. Shawn looks at her, then back toward the audience briefly. I think fans are smarter than that. Applause. Joy gives a small, almost dismissive smile. Fans can also be very loyal, sometimes to a fault. One of the co-hosts sighs quietly, clearly feeling the tension. Joy, but Shawn responds before it can be redirected. Loyalty isn't a fault. The audience reacts immediately, clapping, a few cheers. Joy shrugs. It can be if it stops people from being honest. Shawn nods slowly. I actually agree with that. That catches her off guard, just slightly. But, he continues, honesty doesn't have to mean assuming the worst about someone. The audience reacts again, this time louder, more supportive. Joy crosses her arms again, leaning back. I'm not assuming. I'm asking questions. Shawn meets her gaze directly. And I'm answering them. There's a brief standoff, both holding eye contact, neither backing down. Another host quickly steps in, voice upbeat but strained. Okay, let's bring this back a little, because this is getting intense for a Tuesday morning. The audience laughs nervously. But Joy isn't done. I just think it's important not to take everything at face value, especially when someone's image is part of their career. Shawn nods. I agree. But there's a line between questioning and dismissing. The audience goes quiet again. Joy raises an eyebrow. You think I'm dismissing you? Shawn answers calmly. I think you're not really listening to what I'm saying. That hits harder than anything so far. The audience reacts with a mix of oohs and applause. One of the co-hosts covers her mouth briefly, clearly surprised. Joy sits up straighter now. I'm listening. I just don't necessarily believe everything I hear. Shawn doesn't look away. You don't have to believe me. But there's a difference between skepticism and deciding something isn't real before the conversation even starts. The audience claps again, more unified this time. Joy's expression tightens slightly. So now I'm deciding things? Shawn keeps his tone even. It feels that way. There's another pause, longer this time. Even the other hosts seem unsure whether to step in or let it play out. Joy lets out a small laugh, but there's no humor in it. You're very composed. Shawn nods once. I try to be. Joy leans forward again, eyes locked on him. Almost too composed. That line shifts the energy again. Shawn's jaw tightens just slightly, but he keeps his voice steady. Is that a problem? Joy responds immediately. It can be. Sometimes it means you're not being real. A louder reaction from the audience this time. Some gasps, some murmurs. Before anyone else can interrupt, Shawn speaks. This is real. He doesn't raise his voice, but there's a firmness now that cuts through the room. The audience goes quiet. Shawn continues, looking directly at Joy. Just because I'm not reacting the way you expect doesn't mean I'm not being honest. A few people start clapping again. Joy doesn't respond right away this time. For the first time since the conversation started, she seems to hesitate. But the tension hasn't eased, it's only deepened. And everyone in the room can feel it building towards something bigger. The pause stretches just long enough to feel uncomfortable again. One of the co-hosts shifts in her seat, glancing between Shawn and Joy. All right, I think we're all feeling this a little, she says with a light laugh, trying to ease the pressure. Let's just maybe take it down a notch. A few audience members chuckle, but most remain focused, waiting. Joy exhales slowly, then leans back, but her eyes stay on Shawn. I'm just trying to understand, she says, her tone calmer but still pointed. Because from the outside, it looks very controlled. Shawn nods slightly. Controlled doesn't mean fake. Joy responds quickly. It can. Shawn tilts his head just a little. It can also mean someone is choosing not to escalate things. That gets a noticeable reaction, some applause, a few murmurs from the crowd. Joy presses her lips together, then says, So now I'm escalating? Shawn doesn't hesitate. A little, yeah. The audience reacts instantly, louder this time. One of the hosts quietly says, Okay. Joy lets out a short laugh, shaking her head. Wow. All right. But instead of backing down, she leans forward again, resting her arms on the table. Let me ask you something directly, then. Do you think people treat you differently because of your image? Shawn considers the question for a moment. Yeah, sometimes. Joy nods. And that image, soft-spoken, thoughtful, calm, that works in your favor, doesn't it? Shawn answers honestly. Maybe. But it's not something I sit down and plan. Joy raises her eyebrows. Not at all. Shawn shakes his head slightly. No. I think if I tried to be something I'm not, people would see right through it. The audience claps again. Joy tilts her head. Or maybe they wouldn't. There's a sharper edge in her tone now. Shawn leans forward just a bit, mirroring her posture for the first time. You really think people can't tell when someone's being genuine? Joy answers immediately. I think people see what they want to see. A few audience members murmur in agreement. Shawn nods slowly. That might be true, but that goes both ways. Joy pauses. What do you mean? Shawn keeps his voice calm, but there's a clarity now, more direct than before. I mean, if someone decides something isn't real, they'll see everything through that lens too. The audience reacts again, more applause, louder this time. Joy's expression tightens. So now I've already made up my mind about you. Shawn responds, steady. It feels like that, yeah. That line lands hard. There's a mix of gasps and claps, and one of the co-hosts leans back in her chair, clearly surprised at how direct it's getting. Joy straightens, her tone sharper. Or maybe I'm just not easily convinced. Shawn nods once. That's fair. There's a brief pause, just enough for it to seem like things might settle. But then Shawn continues, his tone still calm, but more pointed than before. But there's a difference between asking questions and not really giving space for the answers. The audience reacts immediately, applause louder than before. Joy's eyes narrow slightly. You think I'm not giving you space? Shawn meets her gaze. You ask the question, and before I can even finish, there's another assumption behind it. One of the hosts quietly says, he's not wrong. That draws a small wave of laughter and claps from the audience. Joy turns slightly toward her, then back to Shawn. It's called a conversation. Shawn nods. Yeah, and conversations go both ways. The room goes quiet again. Joy crosses her arms once more. So what? You think I'm talking over you? Shawn answers simply. A little. That gets the biggest reaction yet. Some applause, a few shocked laughs. Joy lets out a breath, clearly frustrated now. Okay, but you're still talking, aren't you? Shawn doesn't react emotionally. Yeah, because I'm choosing to stay in the conversation. That line shifts the energy again, less defensive, more grounded. The audience responds with steady applause. Joy pauses, studying him for a moment. You're very good at this. Shawn tilts his head slightly. At what? Joy gestures lightly. Handling this. Keeping it together. Turning things back around. Shawn shakes his head. I'm not trying to turn anything around. Joy responds, almost immediately. It feels like you are. Shawn leans back slightly, then forward again, his tone still even but firmer now. I think what's happening is, I'm answering you honestly, and you don't like the answers. The audience reacts loudly, applause, a few audible, oh, reactions. One of the co-hosts covers her mouth again, clearly not expecting that level of directness. Joy's expression hardens just slightly. That's not it. Shawn doesn't back off. Then what is it? There's a pause. Joy hesitates, just for a second, but it's noticeable. I think, she says slowly, you're very aware of how you come across. Shawn nods. Everyone is to some extent. Joy shakes her head. Not like this. Shawn looks at her steadily. What does like this mean? Joy exhales, clearly choosing her words. Polished. Careful. Almost rehearsed. A murmur runs through the audience. Shawn's expression stays composed, but there's a clear shift now. Less patient, more direct. I haven't rehearsed anything, he says. And if being calm comes across as rehearsed, I don't really know what to do with that. Applause breaks out again. Joy leans back, shaking her head slightly. It just doesn't feel spontaneous. Shawn responds immediately. Not everything has to be chaotic to be real. That line hits hard. The audience reacts loudly, clapping, some people even standing slightly in their seats. One of the hosts says under her breath, okay. Joy looks around briefly, noticing the audience reaction, then back at Shawn. So now you're saying I'm looking for chaos? Shawn answers calmly. I think you're expecting a reaction that you're not getting. There's another wave of applause. Joy opens her mouth to respond, but pauses. For the first time, she doesn't jump in right away. The silence is different now. It's not just tension, it's a shift in control. Shawn doesn't feel it immediately either. He just sits there, composed, letting the moment breathe. The audience stays quiet, watching closely. Even the other hosts seem to sense it. Something has clearly changed. Joy finally speaks, but her tone is different, less sharp, more measured. You're very sure of yourself. Shawn nods once. I'm sure of what I went through. That line lands softly, but it carries weight. The audience responds with quieter, more respectful applause. And for a brief moment, it feels like things might finally settle. But the energy in the room is still charged. Because now it's not just a debate anymore. It's personal. And everyone can feel that whatever comes next is going to matter even more. There's a lingering quiet that hangs over the table, the kind that doesn't usually happen on a daytime show. One of the co-hosts finally exhales and leans forward with a careful smile. All right, I think we've all felt that, she says, trying to lighten the mood. This might be one of the most intense conversations we've had in a while. The audience lets out a mix of laughter and applause, some relieved, some still processing. Joy adjusts slightly in her chair, her tone noticeably more measured now. "Look, I'm not trying to attack you," she says, glancing briefly toward the audience before returning her gaze to Shawn. "I ask questions. That's my job." Shawn nods, calm as ever. "And I respect that." There's a small pause, then he continues, more softly this time. "I just think there's a way to ask questions without assuming something negative behind every answer." The audience responds with steady applause, less explosive now, but more unified. Joy presses her lips together, then gives a small nod. "Maybe," she admits. "But people watching also expect us to challenge what we hear." Another host jumps in gently. "And I think there's a balance there, right? Between challenging and letting someone actually speak." A few audience members clap in agreement. Joy glances toward her, then back at Shawn. "Fair enough. It's not an apology, but it's the closest the moment has come to one." The tension begins to ease, just slightly. Shawn leans back in his chair, shoulders relaxing a bit for the first time since the exchange escalated. "I'm all for conversations like this," he says. "I think they're important. I just don't think they have to turn into something confrontational to be meaningful." The audience nods, a few people murmuring in agreement. One of the co-hosts smiles. "That's a very mature way to look at it." Joy lets out a small breath, almost a half laugh. "Well, maybe we got a little carried away." That line finally breaks the tension. The audience laughs, some clapping again. Shawn smiles slightly. It happens. There's a brief pause, then another host quickly steps in, clearly eager to move things forward. "Okay, let's talk about what's next for you, because I feel like after everything you've been through, people are really curious about where you go from here." Shawn nods, grateful for the shift. "I think I'm just taking things one step at a time. Making music that feels honest, not rushing anything, and just enjoying it again." The audience applauds warmly. Joy listens, quieter now, her expression less guarded. "And you feel like you're in a better place now?" Shawn nods. "Yeah, definitely." There's a sincerity in his voice that lands differently after everything that's been said. Joy studies him for a moment, then gives a small nod. "Good. It's simple, but it feels genuine." The energy in the room finally settles into something more familiar, more comfortable. One of the co-hosts smiles toward the camera. "All right, Shawn Mendes, everyone." The audience applauds loudly as Shawn gives a small wave, standing briefly to acknowledge them. As the segment wraps, there's a visible shift in the room. Hosts exchanging quick glances, a few quiet comments between them as the cameras begin to pull back. But the moment doesn't end there, because almost immediately, the conversation spills beyond the studio. Clips of the exchange start circulating online within minutes, short segments capturing the most intense parts. Joy questioning his authenticity, Shawn calmly pushing back, the audience reactions, the pauses, the lines that hit hardest. Social media lights up. Some viewers side with Joy, saying she was doing exactly what a host is supposed to do, asking tough questions, not just accepting polished answers at face value. Others strongly defend Shawn, praising how composed he remained, how he didn't raise his voice, didn't lose control, but still stood his ground clearly and confidently. One clip in particular gains traction, the moment Shawn says, "Not everything has to be chaotic to be real." It gets shared thousands of times, with comments calling it the calmest clapback ever, and a masterclass in handling pressure. Another moment trends too, when he tells Joy, "You ask the question, and before I can even finish, there's another assumption behind it." That line sparks debates across platforms, with people discussing whether talk shows sometimes prioritize conflict over conversation. Even media outlets begin picking it up, breaking down the exchange, analyzing body language, tone, and what it says about modern interviews. Behind the scenes, sources say the production team didn't expect the conversation to go that far, but also knew it made for compelling television. There are reports that after the cameras stopped rolling, the atmosphere backstage was noticeably quieter than usual. Not hostile, but reflective. Shawn reportedly thanked the hosts, keeping things professional, while a few of them acknowledged that the conversation got more intense than planned. Joy, according to some accounts, stood by her questions, but also admitted it turned into a bigger moment than expected. Nothing explosive. No dramatic fallout. Just a moment that lingered. And for viewers, that's exactly what made it stand out. Because it didn't feel staged. It didn't feel scripted. It felt real. Back in the studio, As the show moves on to the next segment, there's still a subtle energy left behind. Like everyone knows something just happened that people are going to keep talking about long after the episode ends. And they're right, because conversations like that don't just disappear. They carry. They get replayed, rewatched, reanalyzed. And they leave people with opinions. So what do you think? Was Joy just doing her job, asking the tough questions? Or did Shawn handle the situation in a way that completely shifted the tone of the conversation? Share your opinion in the comments and subscribe to Talk Show Fallout for more real talk show stories.